On social media, you never would have known. It was all peachy keen and hunky-dory, a loving, happy family with great photos. Behind the scenes, I was an absolute mess. I was not the person that you saw on there. I felt like a failure. I felt like a bad mom. I felt like a horrible daughter. And I felt as a failed housewife. As a parent, we are different on how we raise each of our children. Not because of anything in particular, like it's not because we want to be different. It's our lived experiences. What we've been through, what we're dealing with at the time is very different. So if I take a look at my first, she was happy, healthy, and very clingy. The first one could not be put down for 3 months. This one could never be put down. She wanted to be held all the time. She didn't like to go to sleep. We had to learn how to swaddle her so she... Hi again, everyone, and welcome back to 50s Unscripted. My name is Shelley, and I am so grateful to have you here joining us as I share my lived experiences, my tales from the trenches as I embrace my second act. For those of you who are new, I am 52 years young, a mom of 3 amazing young women. I am neurodivergent. I have an invisible disability. I work full time. What else can I say about myself? And I'm happily engaged to my partner, Dan, an amazing man, and we've been together for 5 years now. And the goal of 50s Unscripted really is just me being here to share my lived experiences with you and hopefully provide some ideas, some thoughts, some community or sense of community anyways, to find things that you can relate to or find similarities or maybe get new ideas on stuff to try. So I do hope you enjoy it. And if you like things, which I hope you will, be sure to subscribe and like. And if you do all that, then you'll get the updates and you'll never miss another episode. So how many times have you, whether you're a parent, a caregiver, a guardian, a fur owner, a pet owner, relative, family member, you've just wished you could clone yourself so you could get everything done? So I think today's episode is aptly called The Clone Wars, or for those of you who don't like Star Wars as much as I do, you can call it Kids, Careers, and Chaos. You pick. I'm sticking with the Clone Wars. I knew I always wanted to be a mom right from a young age, and I wanted tons of kids. I wanted a huge house, huge family. So I think I always wanted 5 kids. 5 was my magic number. Life did not happen that way. I did not meet my girl's dad until I was just before turning 30, and we didn't get married until 32 and started having kids then. He only wanted 2, I wanted 5. We settled on 3. And we started right away. Like, we got married and we had our first child. And I was very fortunate with that pregnancy. It was a great pregnancy until like the last month. And then I had some problems, some back problems and stuff. And I did go through a lot of Braxton Hicks, and I had a number of issues with those. They were very intense. I later learned why, once I uncovered some of my disabilities, why everything was so much more painful. And I remember people going, "Oh, are you having twins? Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "No, I'm just really big and in a lot of pain." So I went through that for that, but it was manageable, right? It was more excitement and all that stuff. I did have a difficult labor. I labored for a long time and then ended up having an emergency C-section and ended up with an infection. And it took me like a month to recover. So the ending wasn't as great, but I had this beautiful new baby right before Christmas. And she was a great kid. She ate, she slept. I did, instead of a burping, those little burping cloths, I actually had a blanket I used to have to bring because she would drink so fast that she would spit half of what she took out. But she was still getting lots of food, so that was good. And she started sleeping through the night. Please don't be mad at me, but my first kid started sleeping through the night at 8 weeks old. So she was the perfect baby. I could take her anywhere. I could do anything. She would sleep. She would get up. It was a no-brainer on having a second one. And we wanted a second one fairly quickly. Child 2 was different. I got pregnant shortly after I found out. I think I found out at her first birthday that I was pregnant with my second. They're about 20 months apart in the end. The pregnancy was not as good. and definitely not what you read about in the What to Expect When You're Expecting books. I was in hospital because she tried to escape at 26 weeks and managed to keep her in. I was in a lot of pain. I had a lot of difficulties, a lot of non-stress tests. I was on bed rest, and she was born via scheduled C-section. So that was much different. I felt like I was going in for an oil change. I remember walking in that day going, yeah, I'm here for my oil change. Let's just get this kid out of there. And the recovery much better because I didn't go through all the stress of labor and everything. So much better turnaround on that sense. However, managing home was different. So my eldest, because I worked full time, she was used to getting up. We trained her to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning so that we could drop her off at daycare and I could go to work. And she would go to bed early. The newborn had a witching hour between 1 to 4 a.m. Their dad worked full time, so I was on mat leave. And I would be up from 1 to 4 trying to get the newborn back to bed, fed and back to sleep. And I would finally get back to bed a little after 4 o'clock. I'd lay down. I'd feel like I just fell asleep. And all of a sudden I'd hear, wake up, mommy, it's morning. Because it was 5 o'clock and my eldest was now up and ready to go. So I spent a lot of time just taking her downstairs, turning up the monitor as loud as it would go, and turning on The Wiggles or Bear in the Big Blue House or whatever show was on at that moment and letting her watch that. I think Yo Gabba Gabba might have been another one, but letting her watch all those while I was like half awake, half asleep on the sofa, trying to get some rest in there. In addition to that, during the day, the newborn didn't like to be put down. My middle daughter did not like to be left idle. She wanted to be held. I had one of those, what are they called? The slings. So I could have her right beside me all the time. And I think it was about 4 weeks in. Yeah, I think she was maybe a month old about a month old, 4 or 5 weeks in. And he called at lunchtime to see how I was doing. And so I answered the phone. I went, hey, and he goes, hey, how are you doing? And I just went for about 5 minutes. And when he got home that night, he looked at me and he goes, I think maybe you need to call your parents and see if you and the kids can go out there for a little bit. So you have your mom to help you during the day and I'll take you over on the weekend or whatever. And so off I went. I went to my mom and dad's and they helped. I would sleep during the day when the kids were. So whenever the youngest went to sleep, I would sleep and they would entertain my eldest for me. And that's what I did. So I stayed there for a few days, got some sleep, got some rest, came home. But as I said, she still needed to be held all the time. So it was better. Probably about 3 months, life got back to normal. She was more entertained. She was okay. And it was all forgotten. It was just the experience. Because we forget this stuff because then we go on to have more kids. My third was a little different. So there was 20 months between the first two. And then there's about 3 years between the last two. So 5 years from first to last. And this was a little different. We hadn't fully agreed on a third. I wanted a third. He wasn't sure. And we kind of went back and forth. And then, oh, surprise, we're having a third. And she was a very welcome surprise. And unfortunately, she was an even more complicated pregnancy. She tried to escape at 24 weeks and I ended up on bed rest early again. So the What to Expect When You're Expecting book, I really felt like a failure because I was not having any of those great experiences. There were also a lot of other complications. I was having health issues. There were some blood tests that came back and there was the possibility that she may have Down syndrome. Didn't stop us. We were still having the baby. And we had to go through all of that. So she is the only child that I went into natural labor for. At 37 weeks, I could not figure out why my stomach was tightening and why she wasn't moving. And then when I got to the hospital and they hooked me up, and they're like, yeah, that's because you're in labor. And I'm like, oh, that's what it feels like. Okay, nice to know. That's the difference. It's not only pain, it's the tightness kind of thing. So at 36 weeks on the dot, she was delivered via C-section because at this point, that was the only option I had. And she was happy, healthy, and very clingy. So the first one could not be put down for 3 months. This one could never be put down. She wanted to be held all the time. She didn't like to go to sleep. We had to learn how to swaddle her so she felt like she was being held. So we went and took all the classes to learn about white noise and all the things we had to do. She is also the only child that refused to take a bottle. So I would pump, and that way the dad could feed, and grandparents and siblings, everybody could have a turn. No. She wanted nothing to do with that. The only person she would take food from was her mother. So it was a very different experience. She was like that quite regularly. And I think the first consistent full night of sleep, she'd get the odd full night of sleep, and I'd be so excited thinking the worst was over, and then we'd go back to the same. But her first full consistent sleeping through the night, I'd already been back at work 1 year, and I'd been off on mat leave for 12 months. So it was quite lengthy. It was really hard juggling everything. So even after having my first and being pregnant for my second, my first, when she went to daycare, got really sick. She was we were getting calls from the daycare that she had a fever, that she had a cold, that she needed to be picked up. So I was trying to balance career, where I'd been working very hard to advance where I was going and build my career goal and aspirations. And then I was trying to run out and take care of her. She had pneumonia. So at one point we were in and out of the hospital with her. She had to have surgery for the plugs in her ears and tonsils out and stuff like that. So there was a lot going on. And then, of course, the issues with my second pregnancy, going on bed rest. So by the time I went back to work after my second, I knew I needed to change what I was doing. I had to prioritize. And I made the decision that I was going to not put my career on hold, because I still needed to work, but I was going to take a step back. I wasn't going to be looking to work for the sake of advancing and building this really intense career. I was going to take a step back and try and find an analyst or a reporting role, something that would let me do that 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, or whatever hours I could get, and just focus on, learning, using my skills, but not aiming towards management or a more senior position kind of thing. And I was fortunate. I found a job in the OPS, so the Ontario Public Service, and it was in Oshawa, so it was closer to home. So it was great. So I was able to manage both. Now, it didn't change my work ethic. So as much as I like to say that I was putting in less, I still wanted to do lots. And so I would volunteer in other things. So when the job didn't give me that extra push that I needed, I was finding other ways to spend more time at work. When I was pregnant for the last one, my eldest had started school. So now I'm juggling school and daycare and work and the pregnancy and the problems and the complications. And by the time this third one was born, I had 2 kids in school. So at that point, you're now dealing with all of the extracurriculars, the parent-teacher interviews and the concerts and the plays and the field trips, and it goes on. We all know that story. It goes on. And now they're also old enough that they're getting into other extracurriculars. So swim lessons, dance, gymnastics, soccer, all the different sports. It was very busy. And on top of that, I was still working full time. I was still a housewife, trying to do chores, trying to manage the household. And then when my youngest was 9 months old, my father had major surgery, and unfortunately, due to complications, he became a paraplegic after and was confined to a wheelchair. So that changed my family dynamics as well there. It was a huge change, much bigger change for both him and my mother, changed their life entirely. She was now his sole provider, right? So she had to take care of him, and he needed her 24/7, to take care of everything and make sure he was getting the doctor's appointments and stuff. But it also changed things for us, because we had to look at different ways to engage my parents and get them involved with the kids. Beforehand, with the first 2, they could come and they could spend time at our house. But now I didn't have an accessible house. I didn't have a way for him to get in with his wheelchair. So it was trying to find time to go see them, which when you're working, it's hard when they don't live very close. And we had to try and do the best we could there. At the same time, by my third kid, my marriage was starting to experience some challenges, and we weren't in a happy place, and we were struggling. And it was unfortunately the beginning of the end, because as I've mentioned before, I am separated. And there were a number of impacts that were impacting my well-being. Recently, I've had the opportunity to go to a course on emotional management. I don't have the right name for it, but and it's how to manage emotions, and not just for yourself, but also with your teens, right? So how do we deal with emotions? And it was really great. And it was a 2-day course I took, and there's about 30 or some odd parents in the room. And the facilitator says, so how many of your kids have the same parent? And I'm looking around the room going, dude, how promiscuous do you think we are? But that's not what he was referencing. The comment was really around the fact that as a parent, we are different on how we raise each of our children, not because of anything in particular. Like, it's not because we want to be different. It's our lived experiences. What we've been through, what we're dealing with at the time is very different. So if I take a look at my firstborn, I was newly married. I was happy. We were both happy. She was the only child. We had nothing to compare it to. We had lots of family support. Everybody was there. She had very different parents than my secondborn. My secondborn, we'd had a little more nerves with the pregnancy because of some of my complications. We had another child who had a lot of health issues, so we were worried about her. We're juggling a lot of those things. So my second got a mom who was a little more anxious, a little more nervous. My third, unfortunately, had an even further experience because now I'm dealing with my own health issues, my dad's health issues, the difficulties in my marriage. So all of that adds up, and those experiences feed into the type of person we are. So it was insightful, and I think it's something important for us to remember. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's important to remember that we're all doing the best we can because we are first-time parents. But you're a first-time parent with each child because your experiences have changed, and your child's personality is not the same either. They're all different as well. So I digress for a bit. I just wanted to share that because I thought that was really interesting, and it was very informative when I heard it, and it kind of filled in a lot for me. I wasn't as patient. Like, by the time the third kid came with everything going on, I definitely was not as patient as I used to be. I could very easily be riled up, and I just felt guilty as a result of all of this. I just felt like I wasn't doing enough. I was going to counseling. I was taking the kids to all of their extracurriculars. I was taking them to doctor's appointments. I was trying to deal with my health issues, my pain management, my disability. I was juggling household chores, the kids, their homework, and it was a struggle to manage my weight. So as I said, for the longest time, I struggled with that, and it was really hard. And it definitely kept getting worse during this time because I wasn't coping. I was not doing stuff for me. And so food was a great friend. One way to make me feel better, even though it made me feel guilty in the long run. On social media, you never would have known. It was all peachy keen and hunky-dory, a loving, happy family with great photos and all these wonderful events we were doing and all these great moments. Behind the scenes, I was an absolute mess. I was not the person that you saw on there. I felt like a failure. I felt like a bad mom. I felt like a horrible daughter. And I felt as a failed housewife. So what did I do? Did I deal with this? No, absolutely not. I threw myself into being everything I could be for everybody but me. I took on more responsibility at work and started networking and putting in more time. I figured, hey, 2 kids in school, the third one won't be there long. I can start focusing on my career again and be successful in that. I focused on being that mom. I got to make up for being that bad mom. I'm going to do more. So I started doing Halloween parties and themed birthday parties. I threw some of the biggest birthday parties. So an art themed birthday party, a jungle exploration birthday party, a science party, a Hollywood themed party, a superheroes party. Like, I went all out, costumes and decorations and crafts and gifts and loot bags and all that stuff. So I really, just went the whole 9 yards. And then I extended myself in extracurriculars, and I started volunteering at their sporting events. So when they were working on teams and stuff, so I was a team mom, and I was helping at any charity events and any events anywhere that I could volunteer. I would volunteer at school when I could. I became more involved in my church, and I started singing with the choir, and I started working more with children's programs and volunteering with other areas as well. I continued to do more counseling and listened as they told me, you need to do A, B, and C. You need to consider A, B, and C. You need to really revisit your decisions. And I said, yep, no, I hear you. I'll look into that. And I ignored it and went home. I saw my doctors and listened as they told me more and more and warned me, you need to deal with yourself. You need to get some calm. You need to slow down. You need to get some mental rest. You maybe consider medication. I was like, oh, no, I don't need medication. It's fine. Thanks. I'm good. Thanks for the pep talk. I'm good. I can manage. I took it a step further, and anything I knew I couldn't solve or fix, I avoided. So the distance between my then husband and I got further and further because we just started avoiding the situation. We only dealt with what we needed to, and we focused more on the kids than anything else. I hid things I knew would make my family worry. I didn't want to worry my dad. I didn't want to worry my mom. So I didn't talk to them about what was going on in my marriage. I didn't talk to them about how I was feeling. I didn't share what I was going through. And I tried to be somebody I wasn't. I tried to just project this successful person in all areas when I felt like I was floundering. There were so many lessons learned, and hindsight is always 20/20. I wish I could have done things differently, the woulda, coulda, shoulda. However, all of those experiences, as painful and difficult as they were, have made me who I am today and have helped me become stronger and learn who I really want to be. The downfall during that time, and this is where I can talk about it very openly, is my inner critic was in her all glory, ever-loving, although very hateful stage, and she had full control. She was in full charge. But every once in a while I would silence her and have successful moments, and I would feel good and I would remember stuff. But she was there, and she was beyond negative, and my self-confidence and my thoughts about myself were not that great. I started finding ways to give my kids more choices because I needed to be successful. I needed to find a way to not have so much difficulty in getting them to do stuff. So one of the biggest challenges was lunchtime. How many times as a parent have you had them come home and they didn't eat anything, and then they're trying to eat 10,000 things before supper? So what I did is I'd seen this on Pinterest. And so I got a small 3-drawer plastic bin container. And I got a label maker and it said, pick one, pick one, pick one. I put a little plastic jar in the fridge that said, pick one. And they had to go through. So while I was making the main part of their lunch, they got to go through and pick one from the top bin for their morning snack. They got to pick one from the middle bin for their lunchtime snack. They got to pick one from the bottom drawer for the afternoon snack. They got to go in the fridge and pick something from there for their lunchtime. So, some of the choices in the morning, I would have things like granola bars or what were those? Sometimes it was Pop-Tarts. I know, not the healthiest, but Pop-Tarts occasionally. The second bin was more lunchtime. So it would be like the gummies or the fruit roll-ups to go with the meal. And then the last one would be like Rice Krispies or those Bear Paw cookies and stuff. In the fridge, they would pick between a yogurt tube or a cheese string. So I'd have those things to go with their lunch. It made the kids feel more involved. It made preparing lunches a little less hectic. It made them eating their lunches a little more successful. Didn't work forever, but it was a good start, and it got them involved. As they got older, it then also showed me that I could get them to help out with other things. So as they showed interest and they wanted to help with cooking supper, they would help cook supper, or they would help set the table. Then they'd start to help clear the table. Then they'd start to help sweeping. So we found ways to incorporate it and engage them in doing, various things. And that took some of that pressure off. But I was still continuing to try and be everything for everyone. And I did not prioritize my self-care at all. I didn't listen to the expert advice that I was being given. I didn't listen to friends who were telling me. All I listened to was this inner critic. I was great at helping other people and seeing where they were struggling and giving them advice, but I couldn't see the same challenges in myself. And my inner critic was one of those people that would jump to conclusions, and everything was a disaster, and it was always worst case scenario. I lost my voice at that time in a lot of parts of my life, and I became very outspoken in others. So where I felt strong, where I felt successful, I would be forefront, and I would talk about what I knew, and I would be confident. But then I would go home, or I would go out into another situation, and I wouldn't speak up. I was like I said, I would stand up for other people. I just couldn't do it for myself. My health continued to be complicated. My weight continued to go up, and that had huge impacts on my mental health as well. Not dealing with these also meant I wasn't dealing with the difficult areas of my life that I really needed to pay attention to. So through myself and what I did, I kept doing more. And that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest mistake you can do. We try and keep ourselves busy so we don't look at those things. And I worked on delivering camps now. So I was running camps for the church and even more kids programs. I was volunteering with more groups. I was helping at other events. I started side businesses, because I'm not busy enough. Let's try selling books and makeup and cooking tools. And I just continued to overextend myself. I continued to throw all those special parties and all those different things. And then I would try and do stuff at home. So when it was March break, I'd organize an at-home spa day, or I'd do science experiments. Looking back, I wish I could have focused on my self-care a bit more. I wish I had known that I had ADHD. I wish I had believed in myself the way I believed in others. I just wish I had been stronger. But as I said, hindsight's 2020, and this is what made me who I am. But I still have wonderful memories, and I still have good memories. As much as I was dealing with stuff and as much as my marriage collapsed, I do have good memories from that. And that's shaped who I am and what I've become. Have I fixed everything? Absolutely not. Have I stopped trying to learn or change and grow? Not at all. Have I had success and seen change? Absolutely. Do I still feel like I'm living the Clone Wars sometimes? 100%. That's what we all need to remember. We are human. We're going to deal with some difficult decisions. We're going to have some rough spots, and we're not always going to get it right. Every experience is an opportunity to learn, change, and grow. Let's try not to beat ourselves up. Let's try not to let that inner critic tell us that we're a failure, and focus on what did we take away from it? What can I learn and grow? Remember, it's not a mistake. It's just a misstep. And we're going to learn from that, and we're going to take that and change it and keep expanding. Be open to learning, be open to taking those lessons learned, and figure out how to be your true and authentic self. And look at what you need to do to continue to change and grow. Most importantly, remember that you cannot be everything to everyone, and you have to prioritize yourself. So do what is right. Do what aligns with your beliefs, and let go of the things you can't control. You cannot control what people think of you. You cannot control what people say. You cannot control what people do. You cannot make them believe what you believe. All you can do is be your true self and guide yourself and do the best that you can. I hope you found this helpful. Be sure to add your comments and talk about your experiences, share some of your lessons learned. What were some of your wins when trying to get your kids to help and engaging them around the house? How did you get them doing chores? Did it work? Share your stories. Be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss a future episode. Thank you so much for joining, and we will see you soon. Hey, you're still here. Have you checked out the next episode? It's a really good one. Lots of great stories. I think you should check it out. You'll enjoy, and make sure to subscribe so you get notified when new ones drop.